Welcome to Edged Mindset. What's going on, guys? We got another video for you. We're taking a look at these three interesting beauties. Why, may you ask? Well, I've had these kind of in the background of some other content I've been shooting recently, and they grabbed a lot of attention. People are wondering, what are these knives? How do they work? So on and so forth. So I wanted to dedicate a video on it. I've been trying to put together a video of like my top most unique locks in my collection or something like that, and it just doesn't jive. I don't actually have a lot of very unique locks, and really these two are the only unique locks out of this group. This one has a unique function and action, but the lock itself is not unique. So I'm just going to call this video, I don't know, 3 strange knives in my collection that I want to talk about, and hopefully you want to watch. Maybe that title's a little long, but I think I'm going to go with it. So I'm going to go through each one of these, tell you what it is, why it's kind of interesting, why it's kind of cool, and we'll take it from there and leave some comments. So this is the Asheville Steel Paragon Warlock. So the history of that company, Paragon knives have been around for a long time. Asheville Steel purchased them years and years ago and kind of carried on the legacy with the knives. And this is a knife that's under that offering. Now, I don't think this was offered under the original Paragon knives. They did primarily automatic knives. So this is solely a Asheville Steel invention, and it is really, really cool and very, very unique. This is one of those knives that I love to show people and just ask them if they can understand how to open this thing up, because it has a very unique shape. There's no holes or openings on here. If you press this, nothing happens. If you press this, nothing happens. You can't pry this apart, nothing slides, and they get really confused. And the coolest thing about this knife is this clamshell operation. You press on both of these large oversized pivots at the same time, and it opens up. And then that allows the blade to swing out, and then you can close it, locking it in the open position. So this is classified as a gravity knife, because gravity is what opens and closes this particular knife. And of course, gravity knives are very confusing, because you could take a shark lock like this and use gravity to open it as well. And you can do it with button locks and all kinds of things. But I don't know. The laws get very funky, especially when you get to gravity knives, on what is or isn't a gravity knife and why that thing is or isn't a gravity knife. I just kind of don't want to even focus on it, because it's kind of like kicking the hornet's nest. We'll just let it be. This particular one has Baker Forged Damascus steel. You can see it has copper within this Damascus, and then it has a core of regular Damascus, or rather a layer of regular Damascus on the outside, and then a core of steel. So this copper does not go all the way through. It's only on this layer, if that makes sense. So if you're looking at it this way, picture it with 3 different layers thick. In the middle, almost cut myself. In the middle is this dark part, and that is just solid stainless steel, or it could be slightly carbon. I'm not sure exactly what the core is. I would imagine it is a stainless steel. Right there in the middle. And then the next layer is a thin layer of copper, and then the top layer is this Damascus. So then as you grind the knife with these bevels, you start to uncover these different layers. And as you can see, the copper is the thinnest of them all, which is why you only get like this single ribbon here, instead of a whole kind of flat plane like the core here. So a lot of people were concerned about this knife because they thought that the copper might mess with the integrity of the steel or the blade or the edge, but it won't, because the edge is this solid core right here. And that's what's responsible for cutting. So this knife is cool because of this clamshell opening feature. The actual lock mechanism, though, isn't that crazy. Let's see if we can picture it here. You can see it's got a pin that goes through that tang, and then it rides in 2 channels on the inside of this handle. And then when it opens, it hits a stop in that channel, and then this encases that pin so that it can't move. It locks up reasonably solid. There is a little bit of wiggle. If you put any pressure on the buttons, you get even more wiggle. And then if you start pressing the buttons, you get lots of wiggle. But if you're just holding the handles here, it's pretty stout. It's about the same as like maybe an OTF or something in terms of movement. I've actually got another one of these with full titanium handles that locks up bank vault tight. So some of it just depends on the particular build and kind of how it fits together. This one has aluminum handles that is gray anodized. You can see it's got a distal taper down to the handle here, titanium pocket clip. Very cool, fun, fidgety piece. That's cool to show people and whip out. And it's also cool because you can have a sharpened dual edge knife just like this. And then this tapered handle kind of gives you some good security, because you're not going to slide up because it actually widens. So even though it doesn't have like a lot of jimping or texture, because of the shape of the handle, it kind of creates a reverse funnel that prevents your hand from sliding up, or at least reasonably speaking. So that's the first one. Very, very cool knife. Next up is the Hawk Knives Gearhead. Now this particular, that was pretty cool, right? This particular knife has been licensed to Mantis knives, so it's a more affordable version. I think these go for like $150 or something like that from Mantis Knives. It's got a 440C Damascus blade, I believe, so nothing too crazy there. Has some carbon fiber, has some steel. At the end of the day, the actual locking mechanism is just a liner lock. But the cool thing is this gear system that's right here. You can see how this handle starts to move up. And how this works is you put pressure on this handle here, and then through like the different fulcrums and stuff of these gearings, it allows it to fly open like that. It's a lot of fun to play with this thing. It's a very, very cool knife. Sometimes it can be tricky to fire. You've got to really get a good angle at it and give it a good squeeze at the end to get it to really pop open like that. Hard to do on the camera. It's one of those things, if you overthink it, you kind of mess it up. Not the most practical knife in terms of hard use and carry. You've got these exposed gears here. It can be a little tricky to open up, but it is a cool knife nonetheless. I believe this was designed by Hawk Sr., so Gavin's father. Back in the day, they kind of have a family tradition of doing very cool, unique type knives. But definitely something worth checking out. The Gearhead, designed by Mr. Hawk, produced by Mantis Knives, this particular version. Now they did do like full custom, full Hawk knives of this as well, but this is the only production version, like full production version, I believe that they did. Don't quote me on that. Next up, we have an oddball here too as well. This is the Spyderco Phoenix. So this came out in the early 2000s. It was noted as being one of the, if not the most expensive knife that Spyderco had produced on their production line. And it featured titanium when titanium was not super common in production knives. I remember when this came out originally. In fact, I picked one up on the secondary market. It's very similar to this. It had VG10 steel just like this, made in Japan just like this. The only difference, and it's a pretty big one, is the original version had white micarta scales instead of red G10. Not sure why they went with red G10. I mean, this is so close to being a reproduction of the original one, down to pretty much every detail, except for the scales being completely different material and color. Everything else is the exact same. Now this has a ball lock, which isn't that crazy because the Mantis 2 also has a ball lock. The difference is that this one is exposed. It doesn't have a plastic cage around it that you grab. Instead, you put your fingers right on that ball and pull it down and unlock the knife. Now this uses a much larger ball than the Mantis 2, but it is pretty cool, and this is the first knife I'm aware of to use this. Might not be completely true. There may have been something before it, but I think this might be the first usage of this kind of ball lock, and it's kind of cool that they went fully exposed like that. You can see the whole thing inside of there with this brushed titanium. This is very much a early 2000s, mid 2000s design. It kind of screams of that time period with these kind of decorative holes going through it and some of these other things. Very small blade for the size of the knife. You've got this big choil up here, and then you've got a decently sized handle down here. But classic piece, oddball piece. I'm so glad to have one of these back in my collection. I fondly remember the original one as being one of the first like expensive and out there knives that I had purchased. All right, guys, that's it. Comment down below which one is your favorite. Is it the Warlock from Asheville Steel Paragon Knives? Is it the Phoenix from Spyderco? Or is it the Gearhead from Mantis Knives designed by Mr. Hawk? Comment down below which one do you like the most. Till the next video, you guys take care.